And I'm Bob McMahon. I'm a senior career coach here at the University Career Center. And amongst many of the things we do related to careers, we also can provide some advice and feedback on personal statements, for example, or the process of applying to and investigating graduate school. Here's a little outline for our session today. First, we've done the introductions. We'll have an overview of elements of a personal statement. We'll review some common pitfalls. We'll analyze and discuss some sample introductions in paragraphs and provide additional tips and resources. So up next, I'm going to turn it over to Darla, where she'll guide us through that first phase.
Thanks, Bob. So as everyone here knows, a personal statement is a high stakes document that is unusual because it doesn't resemble most writing that we do elsewhere in our life, and we don't tend to do it more than once. So it's a unique document, which is why we think it's important to spend some time looking more closely at the do's and don'ts. So a personal statement is an indication of your priorities and your interests to an admissions committee. It is a story. It's your story. It's not a thriller. It's not an adventure novel, but it does tell a story. We think of it as these three overlapping types of writing. It's a narrative, it's an argument, and it's a reflective resume all in once. So we're going to talk a little bit more in the next couple of slides about how to think of it as a narrative, as an argument, and as a reflective resume. Go forward, Bob. Thank you.
There we go.
So, like I said, it's not a thriller, but it still should be engaging. And it's a story that sort of gives an admissions committee a look back at where you've come from, to where you are now, to where you're headed. So it should connect the dots between the past, the present, and the future. It may answer questions like, what led you to your interests in this field or profession? And it's not 2/3 of the document about what led to your interest, but it should at least tell the reader quickly why you care about the field that you want to enter. What are you doing now in the present to prepare you for graduate schools and for your future goals? So where are you coming from? Where are you now? And how to both prepare you for where you're going. If you happen to know what you want to study or research or specialize in more specifically, personal statement should also say that. But more broadly, what type of work or research do you see yourself doing after you complete your degree? What are your career goals? So the reader of the personal statement should have a sense of where you've come from, where you are, and where you're headed. And that should be conveyed in a way that's engaging and interesting, and that conveys your unique voice in very little space. But beyond being a story, it is also an argument. You are trying to make a persuasive case on behalf of yourself to a department or program. So when you do any kind of writing at Temple and you make a claim, you have to be able to support that claim with evidence. And that is very much true in your personal statement. What evidence can you point to for why you are well suited to the field that you were going into and why you are a good match, at least in some cases, for the specific program or school? So what experiences, that's research, classes you've taken, internships, volunteer opportunities, have helped prepare you to excel in the program and in your discipline or field or career? If you're headed to med school, what prepares you in your life for the rigors of that kind of program? Or if you're going into something in the creative arts, where is the evidence in your experience recently that you have what it takes in terms of creativity and grit? Now, in some cases, you do not talk specifically about the specific program or school, and that's true in common app situations like a lot of the professions. And I know that Kim will probably say more about that. But if you're applying in graduate school in the humanities or a lot of other fields, they want to know not just the field you want to go into, but why their program or why their lab or why this faculty advisor potentially. So pay attention to who's the reader of this document. And if it's just one department, how can you make a case for why you're an amazing fit for that particular program? Your tone in terms of argumentation is professional. Okay. And finally, importantly, a personal statement is not a resume. So it doesn't restate what the committee can already see looking at your application, but it should pull out in a reflective way those pieces of evidence that highlight your readiness for the rigors of graduate or professional school. So you're not just restating the years and the things that you did, but can you pick out in a reflective way individual experiences that sort of forecast where you're headed and why you're going to be successful. So a quick anecdote or a quick detail that the resume does not directly state that adds color to that experience and your background. So reflection is actually the key to set yourself apart from other applicants. What is special or unique or distinctive or impressive about you or your life story? And I just want to name that's not always easy to come up with right away, which is why having outside readers is so valuable and spending time really brainstorming. What makes your story special? What details of your life, your personal or family life, your history, events that have shaped or influenced you might help the committee better understand you or help set you apart from other applicants. So, an example of this is going into law. A lot of people applying to law school are really activated around social justice, right? Is there a part of your story that really is the seed for you that motivates you forward? That you can also map onto your experiences and your internships and such to show your commitment to that particular concern. So I will now turn it over to Kim to talk to us about some of the common pitfalls to avoid.
That was awesome, Darla. Thank you so much. So before I go into these common pitfalls, I really want to reiterate Darla's points. The personal statement is truly that narrative. You need to be able to connect everything from your past, present to your future. It speaks a lot to not only where things started, but it talks to where your interests lie and where your goals are in the future. So very important. And as you're going to see through my bullet points too, back to another important things that Darla was talking about, needing to have that argument, needing to be able to provide examples and reflection behind all of these amazing experiences truly make for that standout statement. Admissions committees are looking for pieces of great writing, not necessarily those thrillers like Darla was saying, or these creative writing pieces, but they are looking for very thoughtful essays, and they're looking for specific examples as to what you've done that have truly shaped your interest, but also define who you are and what you want to be within the field that you're pursuing. So as each of us read through, many personal statements each year, we always stumble across certain things that we're advising students not to do. And these are the common pitfalls that we bring to you. So I guess the first two bullets can be incorporated together because in your personal statement, as you are working through many drafts, what you really need to make sure not to do is to avoid what you need to make sure to do, is to avoid general statements. Things like what you see on the screen here, like I'm passionate about German, or I like to help people. They're very general. They're not specific enough. So that lies in the importance of making sure that you show or making sure that you avoid cliche and general statements by using specific examples from the field or things that you're interested in. So for example, instead of using the general statement, I'm passionate about German, you could turn it around to a very specific reason for wanting to pursue German by saying something along the lines of, after studying in Germany, my roommates were ready to kick me out. I listened to German rock at all hours. I spoke in German when they addressed me in English, and I kept preparing German dishes for our shared dinners. That definitely speaks many more volumes to just the statement of I'm passionate about German. They're actually telling you how you are passionate about German. And then along the lines of a common phrase that I read a lot of times is I like to help people. But I want to know more about that. Like, how do you like to help people? We're helping you today. And for a lot of the students that I work with, they want to be a physician. So how are you going to help people? Why do you like to help people? So showing more specific examples behind this is going to definitely take your statement to further places. So for example, instead of being cliche or general, you could basically build it out by saying something along the lines of volunteering at the free clinic, being specific, allowed for you to contribute to my community and learn about the importance of health education and services in economically struggling neighborhoods. This is a very specific statement that speaks to how you like to help people. Another pitfall that you want to also avoid in your statement is being too personal, providing too many personal events. As Darla had mentioned, there's limited space as it comes to a personal statement, and there's going to be certain character limits that you're going to be held to. So you want to avoid being too personal in your statement. However, if there have been challenges that you have faced, we certainly want for you to highlight how you've overcome these issues. That's definitely important. And along the lines of the anecdote that was mentioned, if it's something that you feel like you must have in order to have your statement stand out, that is not necessarily true. You don't need to incorporate drama in a personal statement to make yourself stand out. You need to be able to relay your story in a very nicely written way. Next slide. Okay, and then along those lines too, we're very limited to the type of space or the amount of space that we have. So giving your whole life story, you're not going to have time for or space for. So what we generally say is, especially as it comes to a personal statement for professional school and many of the graduate programs, is that you really want to stick to what you've done during your college career. So avoiding high school experiences unless they have been extremely influential. But really you're honing in on a very few experiences in your personal statement, how they've defined where you are and connect that past, present, and future for your goals. Another really important thing, and I believe that Darla had mentioned this as well, like your personal statement needs to sound like you, right? It's written very professionally, but it needs to sound like you and carry your voice. So while that is true, we also need to make sure that it's written professionally, but it also should be written by the professional you and not carry words or use words that you're not used to using. And if you're a Friends fan, you would certainly appreciate where I'm coming from when you hear this next clip.
I don't understand.
Some of the words a little too sophisticated for you.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, of course it does. It's smart. I used a thesaurus.
On every word?
Yep.
What was this sentence originally?
Oh, they are warm, nice people with big hearts.
And that became, they're humid, prepossessing Homo sapiens with full-sized aortic pumps.
Yeah, and hey, I really mean it, dude.
Every single time that cracks me up. So basically, just the point of this part is to make sure that your essay is written professionally, but it also carries a voice that sounds like you. So we want for you to strive to write clearly, concisely, and directly, and that your writing should sound natural. Next slide, please. All right, and so finally, some other pitfalls to avoid. We understand that some of your interests might lie in the work that you've done through the years with perhaps family members, mentors, but it's really important to know that your personal statement is about you. Yes, you may be influenced by something, but your personal statement needs to truly emphasize your interests in the field. And it can capture things on specific experiences that you've had, but it should be all about you and basically emphasize how your experiences have brought you here and have an admissions committee through what you put in your writing, give them an opportunity for wanting to get to know you more. It's not about what other people have necessarily done. This is an opportunity to talk about you. And finally, the personal statement is something that you should not use as an opportunity to reinstate your resume. A lot of the information that you will incorporate in your application to graduate school will include a lot of the work that you've done in your resume. The personal statement is your opportunity to help an admissions committee really see beyond your application and see about different things that you've done and hear about your goals for the profession. So it's not an opportunity to reinstate your resume, nor do you feel, nor should you feel stuck when writing your personal statement to write it in such a way that the life events that you decide to hone in on need to be written in a chronological way. The idea is that it's written in a very good light and it's written well. It doesn't necessarily need to be chronological. Next slide.
Okay, I think I'm up. So now we're going to talk a little bit about, well, to discuss a few sample essays. We're going to start out by looking at some prompts. So these are prompts that have come from actual applications, and they're a sampling of what you might see. So this doesn't necessarily mean that all prompts are like this, but it really is very important to look at the specifics of the prompt, because if you see the first one, somebody asked how long a personal statement should be. In most cases, the university, the master's or PhD program or whatever you're applying for will give you a length. So in this example, in an essay of approximately 500 words, state your purpose in undertaking graduate study at fill in the blank school. And then it tells you what they want to see. Describe your academic and research interests, career objectives, and how a degree from this school will enable you to achieve your goals. This is a pretty standard personal statement. So if you're faced with one that just says, we want a personal statement, and they don't tell you anything else, this prompt right here is a pretty good outline for what you should be talking about. Now, you might see some variation of that. The second bullet, please attach a statement of about 2 pages describing important or unusual aspects of yourself not otherwise apparent in your application. That one was a little bit harder to tackle. The third, which I think you'd be pretty common to see in a lot of the healthcare or health-related fields, tell us about why you want to be a physician. That's hard. It's really open, and some of the more open ones are a little bit harder. But again, if you want to fall back, you can go to that first prompt, which is sort of a standard personal statement, connect the dots type of essay. But then you do want to be careful, because if you see the final sample prompt, it's different than the other ones. How have your background and life experiences, including cultural, geographical, financial, educational, citizenship status, or other opportunities or challenges motivated your decision to pursue a graduate degree at this university? This final bullet, it's probably a university that has more than one essay. There might be a research statement and this essay. So you also need to be thinking about that. In some cases, it's just one essay. In other cases, you might have multiple essays, and you really want to read the prompts carefully. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're going to see a couple sample opening paragraphs. So I do want to stress, these are opening paragraphs. It's hard. Sometimes it feels incomplete because it is, but for sake of time, you can't all read 2-page essays and have time to discuss them and move on. So we've selected a couple opening paragraphs. So we'll put them on the screen, give you time to glance, not quite yet, can we go back? Give time to read them through. And then I don't want you just to pick them apart. If you were to, my job, or all of us, when we meet with a student, it's not just this is wrong, although I know there's some of my advisees in the audience, you might feel like that's what it feels like, but thinking about what's there that you could have them build on in their next revision. Is there a nugget or a phrase, something that they say where they're telling and not showing, and we can try to get them to show more than tell. I'm pretty sure that chat doesn't work. And so what we'd like you to do when you read, after you read it, is to provide thoughts on what works, what doesn't. And so what you're going to do, I think, in the question and answer is just pose it like a question. So pose your comments as a question, and that's how I think everybody can see those, I hope. Okay, so next slide. I'm not going to read this aloud. I think that's easier for everyone just to take a minute, read through the statement, and then I'll ask some questions about it. Okay. Oh, Starla, good point. Okay, so for the next ones, I will be reading these out loud for making sure that this is as accessible as possible. For this one, does anyone have any thoughts about what works, what doesn't? Blondine, we'll get to your question in a minute, but I would say in general, there is not a general format. There's elements that go into them, but not a blueprint that has to be followed. Okay, did anyone have any thoughts on this opening paragraph? And again, go ahead, put them into the Q&A as a question, and we should be able to see them.
And Zainab looks like they have a question. They raised their hand. So they should be allowed to talk now.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say I feel like it's not using language in the way that person would speak. It seems like they're using a lot of technical words, like dictionary words, and they probably wouldn't speak that way if they, if they were talking somewhere else.
Great. I mean, what's a simple way of saying our jurisprudential system? Law. So propensity to obtain a legal education doesn't seem like the way that somebody would talk. Even sometimes we use too many words, where there's a statement, and attend law school until the present time. This might sound excessive, but if you're working with me, I'd say, well, what's wrong with just saying until now? Don't use more words when you can use fewer words. Okay, so what else people have said? Alina mentions that the person doesn't explain their interest in law. Absolutely. We don't get a sense of why they want to go to law school. Shakib mentioning the misfortunes in their family. And that would be something that I would brainstorm or discuss with the student in a meeting. Tell me a little bit about the challenges you faced. And then we decide whether it's connected to their academic and career trajectory leading to law school. So that's a maybe. It's a definite maybe once there's been that discussion. And somebody mentioned that it's wordier than it needs to be. Absolutely. Lacks elaborations. It feels like the whole thing started and ended in a few lines. Remember, this is just an opening paragraph. It's not the entire essay. Yeah, person's making claims without any support. And that's when we talk about you want to show, not tell, this person is telling. There is no support. So Blendine, that's a great observation. And that's, if you ever hear people saying like, we want you to show more and tell less. Tell is like, I'm great at this. And we want to see, similar to this, how they're talking about his successes after undergrad. Well, what are they? Are they connected? And how does that perhaps motivate your interest in law school?
And Barbara, Sierra also raised their hand. So
okay, Sierra, go ahead. Did somebody have a, Sierra, did you want to say something?
Okay, it wouldn't let me unmute.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, similar to what the other students have said, that they started off with the generic statement that we were just told not to use, about how they've always maintained an interest and always had a goal of having a legal education, but there's no really like background of that interest or the want to have a career in this field or their interest in the field to begin with.
Great, absolutely. And then there's even more than that. You could also say, a good trick is to think about who else might be applying in this case. Who else would be applying to law school? Could they say the same thing or have that same message? I've always had an interest in law and I always wanted to go to law school. Well, probably 3/4 of the applicants to law school always were interested in law and wanted to go to law school. So nix that opening message because it's not going to help you stand out from other applicants. Great. So looking at your comments, it looks like you really have a sense of what this student could be doing better. And again, if I were going to work on them with them directly, what is it about your background that would add to the diversity of the school? Because that's one of the claims when they're telling us. What was that? Some of that post-undergrad success, misfortunes, they talk about that. Maybe that's something that they should mention if it's connected to that trajectory. What do you all think about mentioning having a reference to their LSAT score? Is that a yay or a nay? And I know it's hard to comment, but I would say generally you don't need to make a reference like that. First of all, it's going to be in your application. They're going to see your LSAT score or whatever exam you have if it's required for application for admission. So just making a statement about my grades and my scores make me a good fit. No need to waste space saying it. Okay, next intro. Okay, I will read this out loud. And if anyone doesn't want to hear me, I don't know if there's this trick for that, but throughout my life, I have been told that I am meant to have a great and prosperous future by my parents, a thought that has been repeated to me numerous times through various points in my life. I have been set up to be the best person I can possibly be with their help, and with this, I would say, privileged upbringing, several things come about. Being positively reinforced and being told that I would be somebody when I grow up by my family, my teachers at school, and by my peers has built up a belief inside of me that I truly will fulfill my potential and become something great. Furthermore, it has built up in me the sense of competition that is truly remarkable. Whatever action I'm about to do, be it in school or outside of it, I see it as a form of competition. I am not just competing with others, I'm also competing with myself. Medicine, the most highly competitive field, is almost a certainty for me. After all, my father's a doctor and my sister is currently in medical school. Okay. And again, feel free to raise your hand if you want to make a comment verbally or add something to the questions.
Okay, we're definitely getting some hands raised here. I'll just go down the line as I see them. So Alina, you should be able to talk.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to say that this person uses a lot of run-on sentences, and it would be better if maybe they were less wordy. And also this sample talks a lot about their family experiences more than their personal experiences. So I think it would be beneficial for them to focus more on themselves and how their family experiences actually shaped them.
Okay, so run it, and you could, reading this out loud is actually a good trick for all of you too. You could see how sometimes I sort of ran out of breath as I was talking, and that's because there were some sentences that were just way too long. Yeah, we want some more concrete experiences. Laura, what another hand raise?
Yeah, looks like Sierra has another question perhaps.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I want to give other people a chance to talk too, but I said in the comments about how bringing up the family, like, oh, my dad is a doctor and my sister's in med school. All my life I've been taught that I'll have, like, it's kind of like an expected nepotism, like, oh, because my family told me this and because they're doing it, I deserve to do it too. So I just found a little bit of expected nepotism in this essay.
Yeah, and it's actually the final sentence, like the big point is, well, my dad's a doctor, so I guess of course that's where I'm going. He did say almost a certainty. I'm joking. Yeah, blending with your comment that he or she, we don't know, overconfident and a bit arrogant. Absolutely. It's really hard with personal statements because we're telling you, you got to talk about yourself. You've got to make yourself stand out. but you know what? We also want you to be humble. It is hard, but it's very clear that this student is not humble, right? Like there's no ounce of humility here. Zainab, that is very repetitive. Yeah, that same message of I'm great, and people are telling me that I'm great, so I'm going to med school, very repetitive. Yeah, and Nicole, your great comment about they don't actually say why they want to attend medical school. It's just that because I'm great, I should go to medical school. So we want to know what your motivations are, and it can't just be that people told me I should go to medical school. Great. Okay, let's, again, we're going through these fast, but I want you to see a variety of sample issues. Third sample, next slide, Bob.
Barbara, as we make the transition, I've got two more other folks on deck who wanted to talk. Tori, you should be able to talk right now.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think for me, it's kind of like they might, like a school looking at it kind of might be put off by the statement, because it's kind of like, are you living for yourself? Are you living for your parents? Kind of like what kind of change you want to make, like with medicine, or like what inspired you to get into it. And it's kind of like, you know, I feel like you might be discounted really easily and kind of box yourself in if you come at it in that way.
Oh, without a doubt, it would turn off reviewers. So Tori, you're spot on with that. Okay, I'll read the next, this is the third sample. For 23 years, my grandmother ran the communicable disease department of a mid-sized urban public health department. The stories of Grandma Betty doggedly tracking down the named sexual partners of the infected are part of our family lore. Grandma Betty would persuade people to be tested for sexually transmitted diseases, encourage or safer sex practices, document the spread of infection, and strive to contain and prevent it. Indeed, due to the large gay population in the city where she worked, Grandma Betty was at the forefront of the AIDS crisis, and her analysis contributed greatly towards understanding how the disease was contracted and spread. My grandmother has always been a huge inspiration to me, and the reason why a career in public health was always on my radar. Good writing. But raised hands or comments?
I see Theodora raise their hand and Yesh raise their hand. So Theodora, I'll let you go first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it's just a bit confusing. I don't know if Grandma Betty is applying or if the individual is applying.
Yes. Good point. We accept Grandma Betty into our Masters of Public Health program.
This is for similar writing.
What, somebody just said something? Okay. Laura, was there another?
Yes, you should be able to talk now.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, yes.
Oh yeah, I was about to say the same thing that the previous speaker said. It looks like this is a letter of recommendation for Grandma Betty, and not to mention that the phrase Grandma Betty has been repeated so many times that it's like almost annoying by the third time, like reading Grandma Betty. And Grandma Betty sounds like pretty informal to me to put into SOP. Like grandmother would be fine, addressing her by the last name would be fine, but Grandma Betty like 5 times in one paragraph is like atrocious.
Right. Now, again, I mentioned the first thing I said was that, you know, it's decent writing, but yeah, this is not all of your comments, you're getting the points of this one. When we were going over the pitfalls, one of them was avoid just presenting a family member or a friend without really connecting it. The students at the very end saying, this has been my inspiration, it is why I'm interested in public health. It's not enough. This is a case where I might actually, when we said you don't have to be chronological, you don't. And this student could actually start out by talking about their own interest in public health. And then perhaps the second paragraph, maybe they go back a little bit in time and mention their grandmother. We don't need a name. as just as perhaps a role model, and then sort of move on. We don't need this much, particularly in an opening paragraph. Great, and that's the main issue with this one. Everyone who's commented on it, we've got that same one. Okay, and then our final sample.
Barbara, as you transition to the final sample, I think Theodora might have another question.
Oh, my apologies. I did remember to put my hand down. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, so our fourth and final sample. When Russia, this is actually from Russia's previous invasion of Ukraine, not the current. When Russia invaded my family's country of Ukraine, I was a freshman architecture student with no real vision or ambition. After watching Ukraine fall into chaos, I immersed myself in academic journals and articles on the subject. It motivated me to change my major to political science, alter my career, and provided me with a clear sense of direction. Eastern European culture, literature, and history became the cornerstone of my education. It's a region that this university can help me penetrate on a deeper, more scholarly level. Pursuing a degree in international affairs with a certificate in security studies will help me achieve my long-term goals of military service, as well as careers in intelligence and diplomacy. What do you think? Yes says this looks perfect. Remember, it doesn't have to be a flaw in everything. So if you want to say what works, tell us what works. Or if there is a flaw, I mean, we just set you up to think like everything has mistakes in it. If you think there's something good in this, what do you think works well? Well, we've got a couple of people saying it looks good. But one thing that you can see is that this student has done a lot of the things that, well, has avoided the things that we had mentioned before and really tries to show rather than tell. Changes or transitions in your career can be, not always, but can be a good opening paragraph if you're able to really sort of connect the dots. So any transition does not necessarily mean I should write about that in my opening paragraph. But for this student, where there was a moment, like this moment made me realize that architecture wasn't for me. He changed his major, but he did other things as well. So again, this is showing us the action that he took. He started reading about the Eastern European culture, literature, history. He changed his major. He started taking more political science courses. So it is just an intro paragraph. There have been years in the past where some people say like, well, I don't understand where the military piece comes in. Valid. My memory is that this came in the next paragraph. This was a student I worked with many years ago, and he did get into, I think, every graduate school he applied to. So all of you thought this looked pretty good. It worked. Yeah. Laura, did
Barbara,
you say?
Alina has a question here.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. It's actually, I think I would use something similar in my application because I'm from Ukraine as well. But my question here is that I see that they elaborated pretty well in their introductory paragraph and their experiences. Would you consider how if this is so well elaborated in the first paragraph, would you consider to further elaborate on these experiences in the next paragraphs, or what do we do?
Yeah, because he doesn't really, he hints at, but doesn't elaborate. So if the student had taken specific courses related to international affairs or to Ukraine or Eastern Europe, maybe he wrote a capstone in political science or an honors thesis related to that. They could write about that. They could talk about courses or faculty in the program whose research interests aligned with his. And in fact, this student went to an open house from one of the schools that he had applied to or accepted, and he met the professor that he wrote about in his essay. And he said that sort of sealed the deal on both sides. So again, for this kind of program and anyone applying for PhDs, you definitely want to, not in an opening paragraph perhaps, but mention specific professors who are at the in the program and talk about how the work that they're doing is in line with the work, the research that you've done and or that you hope to do in graduate school. Any other questions about these statements? Again, I know it's incomplete to see just an opening paragraph, but I think you all understand why we don't have space or time to do a full-length essay. But I also want to say with this student, this was not his first draft. So to make the point that you want to have multiple versions, he met with me several times, and this was that final product. So give yourself that time. And also anyone who's worked with me, you know that whole thing of like, just expect your first draft to be bad, get over that perfection, that goal of perfection, because that's not how writing works. It's little by little by little until you get to a product that you're really proud of. And that's what we want you to achieve. Okay, next slide. And I think Bob, you're up with the next slide.
I think you're right. As soon as I can make it move ahead. There. So I'll walk through a few additional tips for success, things to kind of set the stage and get you prepared to get going. And the biggest hurdle sometimes when writing is the where do I start question. How do I break through and get going? And for me, one tool that I often will bring out for a student to use is first identify the essay requirements. What does the school or the program want you to respond to? You might do this by highlighting them, whatever you need to do, copy, paste them, but build an outline from those essay requirements. This at least gets you a framework to get started and keep you on track to answer what they're asking for. So in the case of a multi-part essay prompt, you don't forget something or you don't wander away from it. It's just a starting point. So you make an outline, put a few bullets underneath of points you want to get to, and then maybe one day you say, I'm going to work on the first one. Take it in little chunks. And that's where you can move into different core themes, thinking about themes that you want to bring into the essay, like your motivation and interests, experience and skills, goals in a graduate program, and future career plans. These also might actually be things that the essay is asking for. It's not unusual for a prompt to ask, tell us about your future career plans, because they want to know what you're going to do with that degree. We touched on this. Should I be chronological? And as you've heard and seen, yeah, maybe, but not necessarily. Barbara hit it squarely on the head here. Be prepared to write multiple drafts. You will not do this in one draft. And that's okay. That first one will be the hardest, and then it'll get easier and easier. So as soon as you can start writing, you should start doing that. Remember to directly answer the questions in the prompt. I think we all would agree from the probably hundreds, if not thousands of personal statements we've collectively read. This is not an uncommon thing to happen where the writer fails to answer the question. Using the simple one of why do you want to be a physician? I can attest that I've read many of these very nicely, well-written 2-page essays, and I still come away not knowing why that person wants to become a physician. It's easy to get lost in that story and kind of forget about the question. And this leads to seek feedback from others. And I would say from trusted others, trusted resources. You have a panel of experts right here, the Writing Center, Fellowships Advising, Pre-Professional Health Advising, the Career Center, academic advisors, other professors that might be very close to the programs or schools that you're interested in. This is not to say that you shouldn't show it to your roommates, but you certainly want to seek feedback from others. Now, we will all approach this with a common kind of framework, but we individually will have different perspectives or points of view. This is not to say that one is right over another. It's just you get a whole palette of options to choose from, and you incorporate what connects with you. I think there will be times where we might say, hey, do not absolutely never do that. But generally, you're going to see, hey, it's your personal statement. It's got to reflect what you believe and feel, but you want to get that feedback from a group of trusted sources. And then finally, proofread, proofread, proofread. This was where actually someone who doesn't know you that well or doesn't, know the program you're applying to is a good resource, because they might be more focused on things like grammar, punctuation, and whatnot. There should be some links. Hopefully, we can drop them in the Q&A or in the chat to these resources that are available to you here at Temple. These are links to the web pages for all of the departments that we've referenced here throughout our talk today, where you can book appointments with many of us or other people within those departments to look at your personal statements. And then we can also make the slide deck available, and these are active links. Coming up the rest of this week, we have programs built around preparing for entrance exams. That's on Wednesday. So if you have the chance to join in for that, by all means do that. Thursday, we have a panel of current graduate school students here at Temple that can speak broadly to their experience approaching the application process, what they went through going, applying, navigating, acceptance, rejection, and then what is it really like once you're in. Friday, there's a panel of alums from graduate programs here at Temple who can speak to and will speak to, with that looking back, that reflection. Was it worth it? How's it changed their lives? Any tips and tricks that they might have to help that next person coming into graduate school? All of these you can register for on Handshake. We'll open it up to Q&A, and it appears what's working out pretty well is you can raise your hand if you want to ask your question live to the panel, or you can drop it in the Q&A thing, and we'll respond in that way, or maybe respond verbally. So how's that? Let's unmute you, Darla. Let's see if we have, okay. Oh, we got a couple coming in.
Dana, you can go ahead and ask your question.
I was just wondering if it is possible to schedule an appointment with any of you. Like to review my personal statement.
It is.
Yeah, I think that Laura just put that in chat with our websites.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Okay, Shakib, you can go ahead and ask your question.
I wanted to ask, because I'm also planning on going to graduate school, but I wanted to take a gap year. Would I still be able to use these resources a year or two after I graduate?
I think it depends on the office. Is that correct, Darla?
It does. At the Writing Center, we do it on a case-by-case basis. So if we have the capacity, we'll welcome a recent alum to use the service just for professional documents like personal statements. But the way to go about that is just to email me, let me know your graduation year, and then I'll look at our schedule and see if we can accommodate. Usually we can.
Okay.
And
I can also say at the Career Center, we work with alums. You still have unlimited access a year after, up to a year after. And then from 2 years beyond, it's a little more limited, but you can totally do that with us.
And with fellowships advising, we will work with alumni on, we'll work with anybody on graduate school personal statements outside of our peak fellowship advising period, which is from mid-August to mid-October. Beyond that, we are happy to.
And any student pursuing an area that falls under pre-professional health advising, we will work with you throughout your undergraduate as well as an alumni up until you matriculate to professional school.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have a couple of other questions in the Q&A that I'll highlight out loud. Robert has a question about should applicants name specific faculty of the program to which they're applying, professors whom they'd want to work with or study under. He or they note that some universities prefer it and others even require it.
It does.
That sounds- Oh, go ahead, Darla.
It's somewhat discipline specific. This is the kind of question where you would want to talk to faculty in the department here at Temple and ask their opinion on it. In English, which is my PhD, it is normal to talk about faculty research in the department you're going to, and that's common in the humanities and in a lot of the sciences. But it is different from field to field. It is sort of a cultural norm that each discipline has. Barbara, you can please add.
And I was just going to say the same thing. I think that if, like, for PhD programs, it's much, much more common. If all of your school says it's preferred or required, then go for it. There's no downside to doing that. But for other more common applications or ones, I think for law school, and Kim already said that for like pre-health or health applications, you would not be doing this. So it also is sort of application specific as well. But talking to people who've been through the process in your discipline would be the best. But if the prompt is telling you, we want you to, we require it or prefer it, then go for it. The question can then be, how do you do that? That can be a little more of a challenge to some students who are like, okay, I need to reach out. What do I say? And the advice I often give is just make sure that you've read some of their research and be prepared to talk about it and how that excites you. And maybe have a question or two prepared about the program and things that you could potentially get involved with or coursework or something like that.
Great, thank you, everyone. We have another question about would it be worth mentioning the location of a school as a reason why you are applying to a school?
And for me, that would be like a plus. It shouldn't be the sole motivation, but if there's also a location specific rationale, then sure, but don't highlight that in the opening paragraph. It shouldn't be the main reason. And again, it's hard for me to say that. I know with a lot of the fellowships that I work with, the location really, anyone in the audience who's applied for Fulbright, that both of those things matter. So often it can just also depend on if you're applying for a program where you might be doing field work at the location, then I think location would be more important to write about.
Whereas in some programs, it could be sort of a turn off to the committee if you think that you'd be a good fit because of the location. They don't care that your best friend lives in Chicago,
And I guess when I was thinking of location, I was not thinking of that. I was thinking more of like as a research field, but absolutely that does not, or I'm moving because I always wanted to live on the West Coast.
Yes, I love the beach.
I love the beach.
Save that one unless you're going into marine science.
And finally, Kiara has a question about any other tips or resources for brainstorming statement ideas.
We can all help with that. I mean, at the Writing Center in particular, we have regular brainstorming sessions about personal statements. We have tutors that specialize in personal statements. We have this appointment filter you can use on our schedule to filter the staff to just personal statement specialists. And they're really well versed in helping you pull out those details from your life and name, the qualities that you see in yourself and name specifically your goals so that you can begin to have some material to work with in your draft. So if you're really feeling some blockage, you're just stuck, please come in and talk to one of our writing tutors as one of your resources to use.
Ditto. Sometimes having that initial brainstorming is really helpful. Especially if you are, sometimes some people feel like I don't have enough to write about. Others feel that they have too much to write about. Both of those is a challenge. And talking to somebody to start, once you say things out loud, you as well will be able to figure out what's most important for this piece of my trajectory.
I think it's really good to go into using your resources to help continue to brainstorm your ideas is certainly something that you should consider doing, but also taking it upon yourself just to get out. Like it doesn't, your ideas don't necessarily need to be connected right away, but just ideas, experiences that stand out, moments that stand out, people that stand out, put it all down for yourself on paper. You don't need to connect the dots right away, but just dishing out and writing these ideas and things down will help then for you to brainstorm a possible direction that you might want to go to in your personal statement, and will certainly help during that brainstorming conversation that you have with us.
Okay, great. Sierra has another question. Sierra, you should be able to go ahead.
All right. So I am a student. I think I'm a senior at Temple right now. I'm enrolled in the Masters in Public Policy program, +1. And for that, we had to like submit a personal statement, but like a part of the program is that you have to like re-enroll into like actual graduate school. Like you have to submit a new application. Is it like, do I have to make a new personal statement, or could I use that one that I like first submitted? It was called like a statement of purpose, or like it had a different like title to it. It wasn't really a personal statement, but like it had all the same things in it. So should I just use that as like a first draft, or do I have to like craft a whole entire different format?
Yes, and yes.
Oh,
Like, it's, my question would be, what's changed since the last time you wrote it? And I hope something has like changed, that you should have learned more, maybe focused your interests more. You're not the same person as when you wrote that before, and your new personal statement will not be complete if you haven't reflected on what's changed since that last time. And I've worked with advisees who do both of those things, Sierra, either take the old one and revise it or trash it and start all over again. I don't know which is right. Both can work. I think that starting from scratch is a little bit easier, believe it or not, but that that's a matter of, you got to try, you might try one, and if it's not working, then go to the other approach. And I don't know if Darla or Kim have anything to add to that.
I second what you said.
Me too.
Thank you.
Okay, and it looks like Nick has a question as well.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for your time. I'm a non-traditional student, and I was wondering if anybody had advice about any tools for writing the personal statement. Like, I know I want to do an MFT program, and I know a lot of the times they're looking for students that have done volunteer work or that have done research. I have jobs and I have like a different set of responsibilities, so I can't like volunteer. So any advice you can give me would be greatly appreciated. I feel like my situation is kind of atypical.
Well, I would certainly recommend in your personal statement to get out there who you truly are, and the experiences that you have had. So I think that is what makes you you. But if you are indeed applying to programs that require specific things like volunteering, it's a challenge, but I would certainly make sure that you're able to speak to those things, because for as much as your approach may be a little bit unique to the rest of the applicant pool, a lot of the programs, at least the ones that I work with students for professional school, they're not going to shy away from those requirements. So your professional development speaks a lot to your candidacy for these programs, and you should be able to talk about what you have done in relation to the specific professional development requirements that your programs have.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Any other questions? Oh, it looks like we're just about at the end of that there. I think we've taken care of all relevant questions for now.
Okay, well, great. I want to thank everybody in the audience for their attendance and thank the panelists for their great words of wisdom and guiding everyone through this tricky part of the process of applying to graduate school, the personal statement. And we implore you to use the resources that you have available here at Temple. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.